In this section, I'm going to show you how you can make your own assets so you don't have to depend on Megascans or any other free asset library from the internet. Because in a production environment, you're going to be making your own assets, especially at a game studio. You will be required. So it's better if you know how to do this work. All right, so I don't start with a flat a square. I usually start with a sphere. I find that you are constrained to the angles. In this way, I can have many angles as possible. And I just work the shape. You never know what you're going to get with this technique. So we just go around, add some subdivisions, and then throw in a noise just to break that sharpness. And I go lightly around with my train adaptive. Remove excess that I don't want. Chip the edges so it doesn't look too sharp. I find it to be very therapeutic, this type of work. I usually listen to podcasts or something while when I'm working in Zbrush. And then I go and remove a little bit of the noise here and there, edge polish. Then I have my own library of brushes, and I usually put a height map that I find from a texture here in the internet, add it to my alpha. And I just go around and try to play with the texture, see what I can get. And I just go around adding that, testing it out. And then I go into decimate the rock and try to get those angles. And then work the low poly. I find that you get a few sharp angles here and there. And I go around and just working the edges. Sometimes I soften the edges or the faces. And then I add a smooth and another smooth, and then Dynamesh the whole thing again back into quads so I can work. And I go in there and start removing all those squares or like on the side squares, and I leave the edges that I want. Okay, going around all of it, trying to leave some areas where there's not much noise, and go in there with my train adaptive and add a little bit of chipping the edges. You know, I know at work some people love to take their time doing all of this work. I mean, some of them, I'm sure that they already named their rocks. This rock probably looks like a Nacho the rock. For me, it's just another rock on the wall. All right, another one that I use is this planar cut. I like to create little islands. Sometimes it's good to have like faces in there inside the wall, the rock. And again, I'm going in and adding some of this texture and deleting the unwanted necessary noise. Feels like you're building the character of Nacho. a little bit, so it's not just so smooth. It's like building the texture a little bit. Right, I think we can create a second using booleans. So I duplicate the rock, bring it down, activate live boolean, and change the icon on my brush. And finally, I can create a new boolean rock out of this one, and I can create many more. Again, you probably need to know how insert multi-brushes work or how you can create booleans. So I will invite you to look into booleans on the internet. This is pretty much what I did. So I go in there and just try to kill those edges, adding a little bit of a bevel. So out of one rock, I was able to build two. Great. I wonder what the name of this rock would be. Nacha. All right, we'll add a pen to my library of rocks, and we're gonna be using these rocks for my wall. As you can see, I have multiple already, ready to use. Different sizes, different shapes, in different angles. Okay, let's go and create our wall. So I start with a 4 meter or a flat square, just so I can have a general idea of the space for my tileable mesh. And then I go in and insert my first brick. Remember, this is not going to be your standard linear wall. This is going to be a stack, random wall. So I go in and try to play with the shapes. It's a little bit repetitive, so I'm gonna just be cutting to the point where I'm comfortable with the result. Okay, almost done. If we went a little bit farther, so that's fine. I'll fix that later. Okay, let's start filling in the interior part of it. We don't need to do symmetry or anything like that. And since these rocks are a bit have an angle, funky angle, it's really hard to do a double-sided wall with them. You will see later how I'm trying to figure both at the same time, both sides, but it's quite hard. So you might have to go back later and adjust things around for the opposite side. It's a little bit hard to make stacked walls because, the shapes, and also you have to make it look like there's weight resting on each of the stones. Just filling in with the little ones in there, and just keep playing with the rocks, checking both sides. I feel it's easier to see things with this other material, so I'm using the other material now. At this point, it's quite repetitive, so I'm going to jump in time, and you'll see the result almost at the end. Okay, we're just gonna fix this last one and check if our wall tiles. All right, and both sides look all right, and let's test it. Duplicate this wall, merge it, and then move it, and of course it doesn't. It's all right. We're going to fix one side just so it actually works. So I'm going to go on each of the rocks, just adjusting one side so it meets the other one, and sometimes they look similar, so I will just change the shape a little bit or rotate. So as you can see, it's a lot of work. It's not as easy as grabbing it from the library of Megascans. I know professionals use Megascans just because they want to get something really fast, but at work they probably have to do this manually, just like how I'm doing it. Yes, we are getting there. Let's test this thing. And probably just gonna go here and there and push the stone so it actually looks like they are resting on each other. And as you can see, the other side looks terrible. It's alright. I'm going to add more stones. I wasn't expecting both sides to work because, of course, each rock has two different or four different sides, and they might work on one side but not on the other. And as you can see, that the thing in the middle that I'm moving is basically something so I don't get empty spots. Because when I Dynamesh doesn't like holes, so this will bind everything together. Lastly, I just try to bring in that part inside and adjust the edges a little bit more, chip it, and I will also add another piece that I made. This piece, it was like a very simple, not too heavy rock that I made, just to introduce it in the cracks, so it looks like big rocks and small rocks jamming together. Right, so we are adding more rocks in the gap, in between the gaps. And before I merge everything and Dynamesh everything, I need to make sure that it doesn't have holes, any tiles. All right, so I'm gonna check for holes in my mesh. And there are some areas that have a little bit too much of a gap in there. So I'm just gonna go in there and bring the pieces together, fill it in. I don't want unwanted geometry hidden inside. Dynamesh it and see, I can bring that edge back by just using Damien Standard. And I go around everywhere, just using Damien Standard. And I switch it to this other material because I find the matte caps, the red one especially, is very misleading. When I go and do the normal map, all that detail doesn't translate well. So I switch to this one, skin material, just to give it a little bit more push on those corners. And if you notice it in here, those corners, you notice it in the final normal map. It's important not to get carried away like me. And we're going to start doing our low poly, doing some decimation. I'm gonna do my trick where I lower the polygons and make it look very square looking, and then gonna project on the edges of the original. So you can't really tell from this point of view, but basically all those squares are being projected from the low poly to the high poly. Okay, let's do again the low poly again, and looks good. Decent amount of polygons. Just checking in for holes, and we're gonna export to Maya. Okay, so now in Maya, we're gonna check for holes or for unwanted geometry. Like for example, I go in and start cleaning up, deleting faces that I don't want. These all are horrible errors in our mesh that need to be resolved before bringing it into the engine. There's a lot of errors in this mesh that needs to be addressed. A lot of deleting, a lot of merging. Be careful with, do not delete faces that you might need. Okay, after finishing, I go and do a little cleanup mesh. And as you can see, there's a few areas that look different after that. It's because there are unwanted geometry. So you have to go and fix them, either delete them or merge them again and bridge. It's kind of like rebuilding some areas. A little bit of a reduction, so it's not as high poly. And we're gonna do UVs, one for each side. And smooth. Try to fit it each in one island. Since the middle part is not gonna be shown as much, I'm not worried about it. All right. Finally, let's do a bake. And our wall is finished. Ready for texturing, which will be done next.